I'm here representing, among other programs. To his left is Megan Fitzgerald, who has run the Carter Center's election observation mission in Liberia since August 2nd. She's been in the country for several months. Our delegation is led by Her Excellency President Catherine Samba Panza of the Central African Republic. We have been honored to be here, and I will ask Her Excellency to begin. But before we begin, I would note that as we issue this preliminary report, as you all know, the election process is ongoing. They are tabulating results. There's a dispute resolution process. There are other things that must occur before the election is complete. And so we have been here since the beginning of the election process for months. We intend to stay until the end of the election process, including tabulation, dispute resolution, and the post-election environment. So this is our preliminary statement. Let me also recognize, before I introduce Her Excellency Catherine Samba Panza, I also see Her Excellency, the former Prime Minister of Senegal, Aminata Touré, and other distinguished guests. So with that, let me welcome you and turn it over to President Samba Panza, the leader of our delegation.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Liberians themselves led the 2017 electoral process much more than in the past, putting unprecedented pressure on the next 300 staff members. I personally saw the Liberian people, in particular youth and women, eager to participate in the elections and demanding a peaceful process. In particular, the Center was pleased to see women exercising their democratic rights and expressing their will through the ballot box in great numbers. At polling stations visited by Carter Center observers, women made up 53% of voters, despite registering in to vote at slightly lower rates than men. Regardless of the outcome of this election, it will result in a transfer of power from one democratically elected government to another for the first time in the lives of many Liberians. This moment is an important turning point for the nation's democracy, and the Liberian people have shown a clear desire for a peaceful and smooth transfer of power. Given the unprecedented nature of this election, it has been accompanied by heightened anxieties about the potential for conflict. The days ahead will offer a crucial test of candidates' commitment to preserving the peace. The Liberian people accept and have the right to leadership that will not sacrifice the peace that Liberians have worked so hard to sustain. This peace is not only important for Liberia, but for the stability of the sub-region. The Carter Center encourages all Liberians to continue to participate peacefully peacefully in the democratic process as the National Election Commission carries out its important work to deliver final result. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I would now like to ask the Vice President for all of our global peace programs at the Center to talk a brief bit about the observation mission here in Liberia.
Good morning. The Carter Center deployed international observers for this election at the welcome of both Liberian authorities and political stakeholders. The Center's election observation work began long ago with pre-election assessment teams that visited Liberia beginning in 2016. And we also had a mission here that I had the privilege of leading to look at the voter registration process in February and March of 2017. Now, led by Megan Fitzgerald, our core team has been here since August with 6 long-term observers. They have fanned out throughout the country, assessing election day preparations in the 2 months leading up to the election day. These observers came from 5 countries and have been very active. On October 10th, we had 50 observers, short-term observers from 17 countries, visit approximately 145 polling stations in all 15 counties. They were there to observe the voting and the counting. We at the Carter Center feel very honored to have been able to observe the entire pre-election process and commend the Liberian people for their clear enthusiasm and determination to express peacefully their will at the ballot box. Overall, election day was peaceful. Carter Center observers did report that at some precincts there was confusion that resulted in extremely long lines and delayed the ability of some Liberians to cast their ballots.
Thank you. And our statement, preliminary statement that will be issued upon the completion of the press conference, you will see that in this preliminary statement we summarize some key observations of the electoral process up to this point. As you can see, the Carter Center has been here for a long time, not just in this election, but for many years. I myself was here in 1997. The Carter Center has been here in 2005, 2011. Our long history in Liberia is an important part of our center's work. But it also notes that this election day is one day in this electoral process that we have observed since the very beginning. So that preliminary statement you will find will reflect some observations thus far about the election day, the legal framework for the election administration, the campaign period, political participation of women and other marginalized groups. But for today, in this press conference, I'm just going to discuss preliminary results or preliminary discussions about Election Day itself. So, as Jordan mentioned, overall, of course, we all know it was a peaceful day for the most part, and that the opening, the polling, the closing, and the counting process were all generally conducted according to the procedures established by law. In the 149 polling places that we visited, Carter Center observers noted that the polling process inside the polling place was very good or reasonable in 135 out of 149. We did give positive assessments of the implementation of the voting procedures by the NEC and their staff. We did note, as many did, that there was difficulty on election day in some precincts in all the counties with people identifying the proper polling place and with then being permitted to able to find their names on the FRR, the final registration record. So what that led to in many instances was ineffective management of the lines. very long lines in certain precincts. And in addition, what we saw, and I personally saw, I spent my morning yesterday in West Point, in Claratown. I spent the afternoon in Painesville. So what we saw in some places, and this didn't just happen there, but it happened across the country in different places, is a voter would wait in line for maybe hours, would arrive at the polling place and be told, oh no, this is not your polling place, you have to go to that other line. And that led to a lot of people standing outside the polling places, a lot of frustration, and very long wait times. We make some recommendations at the end of our statement about how to deal with this issue. And it was an important issue and a concern that we heard and was reported to us by our observers, by our colleagues in the domestic national observers, by political parties. But one of the most remarkable aspects of this is that despite the frustration, despite the heat, despite people being hungry, it was another example of the peaceful approach, the ability of the Liberians and the desire for Liberians to be determined to cast their vote. People were forced to wait and they waited. People were forced to wait and they waited peacefully. And that was a remarkable testament, again, to the will of the Liberian people to continue this peaceful democratic process. With respect to the closing and the counting, the Carter Center observed the closing and counting in all 15 counties. It was peaceful, calm, orderly, and there were party agents providing transparency. The political parties that we spoke to, and oftentimes we would see many, many party agents in different polling places. So it was a very well-observed election. And the political parties that we've spoken to all believe that they can verify results based on the information that they received at the polling place after the count was done. We will note, as we have in the past, that this election process demonstrated that there's severe marginalization of already underrepresented groups, and the Carter Center has previously made statements about women, religious and ethnic minorities, persons with disabilities, the LGBTI community. To speak about women in particular, given that there were only 156 female candidates for the House of Representatives, and women candidates faced some unique challenges, as we've discussed before. Unfortunately, Liberia is set to see a dramatic reduction in the number of women in elected office. One thing we know is that when women are given the opportunity to participate, they do. We saw that on election day in the precincts we observed where women turned out at a higher rate, perhaps, at least in the precincts that we saw, than men. So we know that there's a desire to be engaged. We know that there's the capacity to be engaged, and we hope that all of the stakeholders will continue to push for ensuring that women have a fair place in the political process. We'll note that the NEC, the NEC, early in the process acknowledged the importance of including people with disabilities. They took measures to accommodate them. They introduced, for example, the tactile ballot. And in the polling places that we observed, most of those places were accessible. And we will note that some of our colleagues in the observation community, the national observers in the Liberia Elections Observation Network, or LEON, they included in particular in their group people with disabilities who were able to observe the election. Some of the leadership of that group, Naomi Harris is here, Augustine Tamba is here, and their research, which was extensive in this election, showed that while the tactile ballot, for example, was not always, there were not always two, there was almost always one, and it was well used. So the implementation of those processes was good and was seen to be well observed, and was well observed by our colleagues in Leon. And that's the last thing I'll say about the election yesterday before we get to our recommendations, is that there were a great number of Liberians who participated in the observation process. And those national observation groups, as I understand it, the NEC accredited more than 5,000 citizen observers. Those observers, there were some issues for accreditation for both the Election Coordination Committee, the ECC, and for Leon. So they didn't fully implement the observation activity, but they were still able to deploy. Leon, I believe, deployed approximately 1,200. The ECC deployed 2,000 more. So both organizations have issued excellent reports of what they saw, and we would like to commend them. Those organizations, as Liberian organizations, have a crucial role to play in strengthening the integrity of the process and in building public confidence. So we commend them, and again, as I mentioned, Mr. Tamba and Ms. Harris are here. With the possibility of a second round, although we do not know yet, and the limited time provided, the Carter Center believed it was appropriate in the spirit of respect and support for the NEC and recognizing their responsiveness thus far to many recommendations. The Carter Center felt it was appropriate to make a few recommendations now. First, we realize that the NEC has acknowledged the difficulties with long lines and the queue management at polling precincts. We would recommend that they offer some enhanced instruction to the election staff with respect to how to manage these queues. One of those issues is voters must be able to easily identify which polling place they're supposed to vote in. And the voters need that information at the beginning or at the entrance to the polling area, to the precinct, so that before they stand in a line, they know it's the right line. And we believe that that's something that NEC can do, and in fact we would acknowledge that this issue that arose in the morning, in many precincts, the issue was resolved effectively, but in some precincts it continued to be a problem throughout the day. So we know that it's possible to get it right. We also would note, and we'd like to commend the NEC, the NEC, they were proactive during the day. NEC officials were out in the precincts, at least here in Montserrado County, and we encourage them to continue that proactivity, going out, seeing the problems, and helping to address them, and particularly throughout the tabulation process as any issues arise. With respect to tabulation and throughout the process, of course, transparency is absolutely crucial. And so we would urge the NEC to continue their efforts to ensure that that tabulation process is transparent at all levels, that the general public is provided with all of the information that they need to fully understand the tabulation process. Related note, the prompt release of results is an effective means of building confidence among the electorate, preventing confusion, and reducing tension. Thus, the Carter Center urges the NEC to release provisional results, including polling place level results. And when provisional results are released, they should include a clear indication of here are the counties and the percentages of those precincts that are reporting, and we should release those results as soon as they're ready. Lastly, we again commend the Liberian people for their enthusiasm, for their determination, and for the peaceful manner in which they've conducted the selection process and the campaigns. And we would just note that we would encourage all of the political parties to continue to uphold their responsibility to their supporters and to encourage their supporters to maintain that peace throughout the process, and then obviously through the transition that will follow the conclusion of the electoral process. Again, you'll receive a copy of our preliminary report at this intermediate juncture in the middle of this election process. We are happy to take any questions, unless anyone else has anything to say. But we'd be happy to do it, and I'm not capable of taking 3 questions at once, so I think we should do it one at a time.